All right. Well, thank you for participating tonight. We are encouraging everybody to ask questions, but we will be addressing all questions at the end. So please do use either the Q&A or the chat. I'll be checking both. And again, your questions may be answered in the presentation, but fear not, they'll be definitely answered at the end. And for those of you who do not know BOSCA, it represents 26 agencies in the San Francisco Bay Area, from Alameda, Santa Clara, and San Mateo counties, providing water service to over 1.8 million people and 40,000 businesses and community organizations. So BOSCA's primary goal is to make sure that everybody gets their proper allotment as far as the water sourcing from San Francisco's Public Utilities Commission and Hetch Hetchy's service area. And because we realize that outdoor water use, particularly in the residential sector, has so much potential for savings, since it is such a large area of water use, the programs are geared toward gardening, particularly through use of water efficient plants and techniques like you're going to use tonight that'll help reduce our water use and overall conservation in our area. BOSCA does sponsor some programs, and I'm sorry that bar is cutting off some of the text here, but many of you may be familiar with Lawn Be Gone, which is a rebate program. The amount varies depending on what municipality you're in, but basically it'll help fund a project to remove your existing lawn and put in water-wise plants and make a beautiful habitat garden like we're going to learn about in a few minutes. There's also a wonderful rain barrel rebate. So you can save some of that water, keep it on your property, and prevent it from challenging our storm drain system. If you don't already have a weather-based or smart irrigation controller, there are also rebates for that, and rain garden rebates. And there actually may be a rain garden seminar coming up in the fall series of classes. So if you're interested in a rain garden, do look out for that. The city of Santa Clara always encourages this time of year to plant. It is the best planting time to take advantage of winter rains. So we just want to remind you that if you are in Santa Clara and you're a resident, you can get up to $5,000 for a landscape conversion rebate. And if you're a commercial property, you can get up to $110,000. So please do follow up with the city of Santa Clara if you are interested in one of those opportunities. And Valley Water is actually the partner for the city of Santa Clara and people in the South County region and Santa Clara County. They offer, similar to the Lawn Be Gone program, a landscape conversion rebate. Again, it varies depending what city you're in. So look at your local city and see what cost sharing might be available. The base rate is $2 per square foot. But like I mentioned, Santa Clara residents can get up to $4 per square foot for the first 1,000 feet of lawn that they convert. And South Bay Green Gardens is a great resource if you are planning any kind of a garden rehab this fall. They offer videos, how-to, from everything from gray water planting techniques, talking about native gardens, their design samples. So check it out if you're in the market for some online help for your garden redo. And you can always sign up for Valley Water's newsletter. They have some great information, and they also keep you updated on projects that are going on around the county. And this last resource to present is a really neat one. It offers a view of different completed landscapes, and you can actually hover over the images and see what plants they are, see what the plant's water needs are, exposure. So if you're not as familiar with plants and you're trying to kind of get a little homework done on the side, it's a really quick, easy, and lovely way to see what kind of designs you can pursue on your own. And as I mentioned, there are a lot of classes coming up. Please do check because BOSCA's listings go through November. So this is just for this month and the beginning of October. And I believe I did see rain gardens on there, but there's a wonderful assortment, and they're offered in fall and spring. So if you miss some of the fall series classes, check in again in March when they start up again, and they're always an interesting array of topics. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and then the bar went away. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to our instructor, Juanita Salisbury.
Thanks, Victoria. Let me share my screen here, and we will do slide show. Oh, yes, I see what you mean by the bar. It's in the way. Uh, just, you can move it around actually. Um, slideshow from the beginning. There we go. Well, good evening, everybody. I did turn off my video camera, so you don't need to see my face for this. Um, Tonight I'm going to talk about winter color for water-wise habitat gardens. I am a California licensed landscape architect, and I'm also a scientist. So many of my approaches are science-based. And here in Palo Alto, you can follow what I do for the town of Palo Alto on Facebook and Instagram, the Primrose Way Pollinator Garden. I also have a YouTube channel, Primrose Way. And if you're not interested in social media, I do have a website, primrosewaypollinatorgarden.com, in which you can learn more about what we've been doing for the last 9 years for the town of Palo Alto, as well as a link to a map of our gardens, which is this, and also a link to my blog in which I discuss um, concepts in greater detail. So we have 7 different gardens here in Palo Alto that you can see native plants in their full glory with lots of space for them to spread out. As you come into Palo Alto on Embarcadero Road, um, heading west, we have the Primrose Garden down Embarcadero Road. We're connecting this garden with our Gwynda Street Pollinator Garden. There's the Hopkins Garden, Arcadia Place, Island Drive, West Greenwich, and then Churchill. So lots of habitat going in Palo Alto. They're always open. I really encourage people to go and look at them at different times of year so you can see what different plants look like fall versus summer versus winter and spring. I'm going to be talking about native plant gardens tonight. We do those exclusively. Native plant gardens are dynamic. What I mean by that is they're in constant change. The relationships between the plants themselves, and the organisms that use the plants, their caretaking. The overall structure of the garden changes over time. So what that means is the garden that you start out with is not necessarily the garden that you end up with. Plants like to move around to suit themselves better. What they like, they will find a way to get that. So an overview tonight, I'm going to talk for about the first half of the presentation on about California native plants and biology and water, because that gives us a nice framework to understand the science. And then we're going to talk about color and design things with color and what color means and just what color is available to us in native plants during the winter. And then lastly, I'll wrap it up by talking about propagation. How do you get more plants? What are some maintenance issues? And a few other considerations. But my overall goal today is to enhance our understanding of the information that color provides, and then to weave that understanding into more rich tapestries of inquiries. So that means your questions will become more sophisticated, so you can continue your journey of learning about color and nature. So when I plant things, I plant exclusively California native plants. Why? California is a biodiversity hotspot, one of about 30 or so on the entire planet. In California, we have almost 8,000 species of plants, some found nowhere else on the planet, more than any other state in the United States. We have incredibly rich biodiversity here. Many of these species are drought tolerant because in some places of the state it doesn't rain very much during most of the year. And one of the engines of the biodiversity are bees. And here in California, we have about 1,600 species of native bees, more than any other state in the United States. Across the whole United States, there are about 4,000 bee species. We're not going to talk about honeybees, those are not native. But in our science-based approach, we have to look at the facts. And one of the facts is that insect species, including pollinators, are declining worldwide. And in some areas of the world, insect species have declined 70%. So with these gardens, um, what happens when you plant native is that you support insect life. And we'll talk about how that works in a moment. A great place to find out information about California native plants, and this is my go-to website. It's Calscape, calscape.org. This is just a screenshot of their landing page. It is a database done by the California Native Plant Society, and they have lots of different species listed where you can find them, design and inspiration, so you can look at uh, different kinds of designs that might work for your yard. You can find nurseries, how they talk to you about how to care for your garden, finding landscape professionals, so people who can design and help you maintain your garden as well as install it. So lots of resources for you to get started there. And you can search by location. And I've looked at Santa Clara County. And what we have for local plants are about 840 different species that you can choose from. And you can you can filter these down by how available they are, plant type, tree, shrub, perennial, etc. Whether they need full sun or shade, the water use, if they have special uses, and so on. A great website to spend a lot of time on. It is an information bonanza and it's free. So it's a really great resource. One of my strategies when I plant things to make sure that the plants do well is I plant keystone and pioneer species simultaneously. Keystone species, because they are the backbone of a mature ecosystem, they provide essential resources and support a wide range of wildlife. Along with those pioneer species, and these are the trailblazers, they rapidly colonize disturbed areas and create conditions for other plants to thrive. And together, they work together. The pioneer species prepare the stage, while keystone species ensure long-term stability and biodiversity. And when you plant these and you balance both types in your garden, you get more resilience and a sustainable ecosystem pretty much instantly. So this is a great strategy for basically guaranteeing success. You might ask yourself, what are some local native keystone and pioneer plant species? Here's another resource to find out. And this is a screenshot of the National Wildlife Federation's keystone native plants for the ecoregion of 11, California. And what they've broken it down into, and I've just done, I've looked at the first page, the top keystone plant genera that we have, and they break it down for you into trees, shrubs, and so forth. Really handy. And they look at oaks, cherries, etc., shrubs like um, willow, ceanothus, and so forth. And then they also have plants to help support certain types of insect life. So keystone plant species for butterfly and moth caterpillars, which are super important. And then the top 30 native host plants for pollen specialist bees. Some bees need a particular type of pollen to feed their babies. They can't feed them anything else. So how to support the wildlife is super important. My top recommendations, I'll just jump right on into it. What I like to put in right away, the shrubs, Arctostaphylos, Ceanothus, Eriogonum, and Baccharis. These go into every single garden that I have. And then trees, oaks, the Quercus species, acer, maple, and prunus cherry. Um, and because of the amplified effects of the keystone plant species, you can simply start with one and build from there. So what I mean by amplified effect is that their their effects on the environment are larger than you would expect for a single species. So they can affect a lot of different plants and help support those plants, as well as supporting a lot of different kinds of wildlife. They hold everything together, literally the keystone in the arch of plant life. So what's an easy way to know if a plant is a keystone species? So we have to remember that plants are the primary producers of food and the basis of food webs. So what that means is energy from the sun goes into plants, which are then eaten by insects, and those insects then are fed to birds. And 37% of animal species are plant-eating insects. And as a rule, native insects only eat the native plants that they evolved with. So among other characteristics, plants that feed multiple species are more likely to be keystone species because so many other species rely on them. They literally define an ecosystem. So starlight gets turned into baby birds through the magic of plants. Plants aren't decorations, they're food. And so this means that native plants will attract many native pollinators and in turn insects and in turn birds. So plants can be decorative, and we're going to talk about one of the decorative characteristics, which is color, in a moment. But we have to understand the function of these plants. So when I go to a nursery, I look for a plant that has a lot of holes in the leaves because chances are it's got some larvae on them. And that means I'm going to be bringing home not just plants, but butterflies. So, pro tip, when you go to the nursery, look for something that is obviously yummy. And then how does it relate to water? So here's a hugely broad concept. The biological connections in the hydrocycle. Plants and animals are storing water in their living tissues and they move it through the environment using various processes. So water is in living tissues of plants and animals. They share it back and forth. And so if we look at the hydrocycle here, I'm sure you guys remember this from grade school, we have water evaporating from the ocean, turning into clouds, dropping as rain onto the land, etc. There's a part of that. Plants are uptaking it, animals uptake it, and then the plants put the water back out into the atmosphere, cleaning and cooling the air. So even though it's a kind of a small part of the overall water cycle, it's hugely important because the function of water, amongst other things, is to keep things alive. And so it keeps plants alive, it keeps animals alive. So even though it's about 10% of the total water on the planet, you know, a small percentage, it doesn't mean it's not important. It's actually very important in terms of what water does as its function. And how can you find out how much water plants use? So here's another great resource. If you want to go for some really low water use plants, you can go to this website here done by the University of California Cooperative Extension and the California Department of Water Resources. It's a water use classification of landscape species, otherwise known as WUCLs. And it's an online searchable database for plant factors of individual plant species. What does that mean? Plants can be ranked based on the percentage of water use of turf grass, which is the reference. The turf grass is the reference against their water use is measured. So turf grass is 100%. And then this percentage is called the plant factor. So uh, a plant that uses as much water as a lawn is going to be 100% or 1. High water use, 70 to 100%. Medium, 40 to 60%. Low, 20 to 30%. And very low, 0 to 10%. So easy to find out how much water certain species are using. Now that we have the science and the biology accounted for, let's talk about color. Color is a magnificent uh, characteristic of plants. Um, Color signals so much to us humans, but it also provides information to other creatures. And when I design, I like to choose evergreen shrubs because those are going to be green all year round. So we're going to have that beautiful green. And evergreen just means that they don't lose their leaves all at once. And so if you have your evergreen shrubs with these dark, glossy green leaves, your garden can look lush. It doesn't have to look dry. So you can have that kind of lush tropical look with plants, native plants that have a nice, shiny, fat green leaf. And you can maximize the effect of that beautiful dark color by contrasting it with a light color. And contrast, when you have dark and light next to each other, it is very obvious to not just us as humans, but to other creatures as well, because it forms an edge, and edges are very interesting to all kinds of creatures. So color can give you more information than just the color itself. It can define someplace like an edge that is a dynamic space for humans and other animals and other creatures. Okay, so let's talk about what's available to us during the winter, December 21st to March 19th. And the following slides I'm going to show you are pictures from my own gardens here in Palo Alto. And here it comes. First one. I love pink. And one of the best pinks that I can find are from the ribes. And this is ribes malvaceum. It's a variety called Christie Ridge. This is in December. December. This is winter time. And this is at the Hopkins Avenue Garden. Look at those panicles of flowers hanging down. Super attractive to both hummingbirds and bumblebees. Bumblebees come out during the winter time because they can control their body temperatures. They actually prefer the cooler temperatures. A great shrub. It has a very low water use, blooms for weeks and weeks and weeks, so puts on a nice long show of these beautiful pink flowers. Gets to be about 5 to 8 feet tall, 5 feet wide, and it provides um, lots of food for larvae, a host plant to 3 confirmed, and likely 76 species of butterflies and moths. So it provides lots of food for both pollinators, provides lots of food for butterfly and moth larvae, and also provides a beautiful show for us in the depths of winter. And another one, oh, this is another favorite of mine. This is this plant here, Heteromelies arbutifolia, otherwise known as toyon. Um, Water use extremely low. I have these in my yard. I do not water them at all. So you can't really get better than that in terms of saving water. They are evergreen, so they have beautiful green leaves all year round. And then they bloom with a white blossom in the summertime. And then these beautiful red berries that stay on in the winter months. And cedar waxwings love these. This is a big signal for the cedar waxwings that there is a buffet of these berries for them to eat. These can get tall. They can get up to 30 feet tall, uh, 10 to 15 feet wide, and they larval host for at least 4 moth species, for more likely species as well. And I have it next here to a white sage. You can see that there's a nice contrast between a lighter green and a darker green. It's almost impossible not to look at the contrast. But again, beautiful complementary color scheme here. Red and green are opposites on the color wheel. Just a very dynamic composition. And here's a design tip for you. If you pair the color of black next to other colors, it will make those colors appear warmer. White paired next to colors makes those colors look darker. So you can increase the saturation or the appearance of the color in terms of its darkness by putting it next to something light in color or white. So um, lots of different ways to play with color here. Another favorite, here we have Verbena lilacina. This is an evergreen shrubby plant. It starts blooming in January and it goes for months and months and months. It smells kind of like carnations. It has a very beautiful fragrance, about 3 to 4 feet tall, 4 feet wide. You can like, when it's done blooming and it's kind of like looking dry and woody, you can shear it back and it'll come right back the next year. Super attractive nectar source for bees, butterflies, moths, and hummingbirds. I love this plant. Um, Blue or purple is a super attractive color for bees. They're really interested in things that are blue or purple because for them, those colors mean sugar because blue flowers often have a very tasty nectar. Some other fun plants. So I love the manzanitas, otherwise known as Arctostaphylos. This is Arctostaphylos densiflora, variety called Howard McMinn. One of the easiest shrubs to grow, in my opinion. It's evergreen with these beautiful small dark green glossy leaves. Looks good all year round. It doesn't look dry during the summertime or even during the hot portions of the fall. It's got these beautiful white or pale pink tinged blossoms in January. And it's a host plant for 36 species of butterflies and moths, super low water use. We have these growing in the corridor project, which does not, in some sections, get watered at all. So super low water use. And the color is just magnificent. I just love the pale blush pink of this. A lot of different species of Arctostaphylos. This is one of my favorites, though. If you like those white flowers, and I love a white flower, this is Ceanothus. This is Ceanothus rigidus snowball, and evergreen with those sparkling white blooms in January, super low water use. Ceanothus doesn't actually like to get watered during the summertime, can pretty much live on just rainfall alone once it's established. This gets to be 4 to 6 feet tall, 5 to 15 feet wide, larval host for about 77 butterfly and moth species, but this is just a magnificent shrub. These shrubs are together at the Island Drive Garden. So this is such a show that these put on together. And you can maximize the effect of color by massing plants together that bloom at the same time. So a mass of color is not only attractive to humans, but also very attractive to pollinators because when you have a big mass of flowers, that just screams abundance, abundance of bloom, abundance of life, and it's just very joyous to look at. Imagine this is the Arctostaphylos. Imagine like 3 or 4 of these where your lawn used to be with a big mass of the ceanothus in the front in January, just the color that that would look like. So again, that's the Arctostaphylos densiflora, Howard McMinn, next to the Ceanothus rigidus snowball. This is at the Island Drive Garden in January. So again, that white makes these colors appear darker or more saturated. I mean, that green looks super dark. So just a beautiful combination. If you like blue, remember I said blue is super attractive uh, to bees. This is another ceanothus, and you can get ceanothus in so many different forms, both ground cover, shrub form, and tree form. So you can pick and choose whatever is going to fit in your garden the best. This is one of my absolute favorite ceanothus to use because it lives a long time and it requires almost no water. Ceanothus maritima valley violet starts blooming in January. Super low water use and the larval host for dozens of butterfly and moth species. Again, you can see She's got her tongue hanging out because she knows that these blue flowers have nectar on them. So she's got her antennae up there and is zooming in. So the color is conveying information to her. Super cool plant. Again, if you like red and green, if you like those Christmas colors, this is another fun one. This is actually in my own home garden, Ribes viburnifolium. This is evergreen. It's got these beautiful dark green leaves here, and it's got these masses of tiny little red flowers start blooming in January and continues for weeks and weeks and weeks. Then they form little fruits that are super attractive to birds. The birds will eat them. Um, and it's a likely larval host for over 30 species of butterflies and moths. Super low water use, very easy to grow, very vigorous, just a great plant. Again, you know, how beautiful during the holiday season. Again, with the red and green. Nature loves this particular red and green combination, those complementary colors. This is Ribes californicum. This is at the Primrose Way Garden. These red blooms start in January and continue for weeks. As you might suspect, these flowers are very attractive to hummingbirds. They love a tubular flower, and a tubular red flower is like the best thing that they've ever seen. And this one, if you're looking for a good barrier plant to keep people out of certain areas, you don't want them in, this is extremely thorny. So I'm just saying, could be useful for more than just one purpose here. Also, super low water use. It leaves out in response to cool, rainy weather like we have during the wintertime. And it's drought deciduous, which means it will drop its leaves during the summertime. And then what you are left with seeing are its fruits and its thorns. So can be very ornamental. And it's the likely larval host to over 80 species of moths and butterflies. So really, really just a showstopper in wintertime. Do you like yellow? Here's a nice perennial plant, Ranunculus californicus, also known as the buttercup or California buttercup. And you can see how shiny the petals are. And yellow is one of these also attractive colors to pollinators. You can see she's been gathering up the yellow pollen there. She's got her antennae out because she knows that there's something good there. These yellow blooms start with the rain in February and they continue for weeks. And it just gives such a fresh feeling to the garden when you see these fresh buttercups coming through in the early and well, late February and into spring. This actually dies back to the ground and completely disappears during the summertime after blooming. If you can get to the seeds before they drop off, they are edible and they will self-sow. So you can just grab a bunch of seeds, toss them into other areas where you might want a splash of yellow. And yellow is one of those colors. If you like a contrast between different colors with a yellow, a little yellow goes a long way. And that's just a little bit of color theory for you because it's a light nature like that. Um, if you have lots of like 90% yellow, that can be overwhelming. But if you have 10% yellow, it becomes more balanced because it's a very strong color and very bright. Again, with the yellow, this is another ribes. This is one of my absolute favorite ribes. No thorns. This is Ribes aureum var gracillum. And this blooms with yellow flowers in late February and early March and continues for weeks and weeks and weeks. And these are nice tubular flowers that are extremely attractive to hummingbirds. They love a tubular flower. And these just are so joyous looking. Super low water use. Some are deciduous, so they will drop their leaves later in the summer. And they're ripe berries. These are the actual berries that I harvested from this plant. You think those look very tasty? They are delicious. They are just super yummy. And they can be extremely prolific. So you can make jams with them. You can eat them fresh. this is at the Hopkins Garden. I usually, on my garden rounds, stop and hang out in that garden for a while, eating a few handfuls of these when they ripen up. And it is the likely larval host for over 70 species of butterflies and moths. And these are just these beautiful translucent berries. When they're backlit by the sun, you get these glowing, ruby colored berries hanging down. Again, communicating things to us, moisture, sweetness, abundance. So it tells us some things. More berries. I like the mealtime for the humans. One of my other favorites, this is in my home garden. This is Vaccinium ovatum, otherwise known as our native huckleberry. This is evergreen with white flowers in February, tubular flowers there, and they turn into tasty blueberries in the summertime. So it's a member of the blueberry family. Super low water use, likely larval host to over 50 species of butterflies and moths. They are delicious. They make a great upright hedge. If you like them to grow a little faster, cottonseed meal enhances the growth. They do like to be in a little bit of shade, but they are extremely delicious. You can make jam with them, eat them fresh, put them on ice cream. Again, the blue communicates so much to us, and you might be getting to ask yourself some more questions. What are the nutrients in these? What are the phytochemicals that are in there? The phenols that like resveratrol, that help us, that enhance our health. Lots of questions to explore just about the blue fruit. Again, with the food, Juanita, what are you doing? One of my favorite strawberries, we have several different species here in California, Fragaria virginiana. This is an evergreen strawberry. This one does not spread by runners, which is great for controlling it. And I think out of all the native strawberries, this has the best tasting fruit. You can see about how big they are. They're not huge, but they have an intense strawberry flavor and super delicious, easy to grow from seed. Um, if the slugs get to these before you do, you can just toss the berry off to the side and you'll get some more plants. Um, and they fruit in February. So not only are you getting flowers in the wintertime, you're getting snacks. I mean, what more could you ask for? They're great to tuck into small spaces, they're evergreen, and likely larval host for over 30 species of butterflies and moths. So, um, you know, red, red means probably taste good. We know that strawberries are actually pretty tasty. Um, some yellow. So here we have Paratoma arborea, otherwise known as the bladder pod. This is one of the easiest shrubs to grow known to mankind, I think. You get these beautiful yellow flowers in February, and this will bloom almost all year long. Super attractive to hummingbirds. This was at the Primrose Way Garden. This you can grow easily from seed. Just take a seed, plant it in the ground. It will sprout quickly, and then within a single season can grow about 3 feet and gets to be about 6 feet high and 6 feet wide. You can prune it into shape. The pods are edible and larval host for several moth and butterfly species. Again, you know, um, the plant just communicates abundance. And no talk about color would be complete without talking about our annual wildflowers. The wildflowers that basically, you know, go to seed after a single year. They don't persist after um, they are done blooming. They do the seed thing and then they're gone. But these will actually self-seed themselves for the next year. And this is actually, I took over one of my neighbor's yards and I tossed out these yellow Lea platyglossa, otherwise known as tidy tips, along with these blue Phacelia campanularias with some orange blossoms here in the back of Serratia ambigua. Um, one of my favorite color combinations, just beautiful with the blue and yellow, again, complementary colors across the um, the color wheel just, communicates abundance and freshness, and they look joyful to me. And again, the contrast, because you have a warm and cool contrast. So again, you can contrast colors based on their heat or coolness. And that kind of creates kind of like an edge. You get to start to see the clumps become delineated. So again, color, depending on if it's warm and cool, can talk to you about form and massing and tell you if you have a lot or a little bit of color, a lot of plants based on, just the abundance and the quantity that you see. Another great color combinations, and whenever I pair a pale lavender like this next to a beautiful light green, it just kind of feels like Easter to me. Um, the Phacelia ciliata, another annual, starts blooming in early March. It's an annual again, easy to sow with some seeds, sprouts in response to winter rains, and it will reseed in place, and it blooms for weeks and weeks and weeks. Contrasts nicely with the soft gray-green of the Salvia apiana. This is the white sage, another favorite plant here. Smells good. The sage smells amazing. But the Phacelia, low water, likely larval host to several butterfly and moth species, but just a beautiful color combination, again in the wintertime. And then the color takes on different aspects when you have it backlit like this from the sun shining through the leaves. It's different from this color. So, the color again telling you where the sun is coming from. Color helps inform you about your surroundings, about the environment. So again, about the green glossy leaves, to maximize the effect of lushness in your garden, if you don't want things to look dried up. So plant those dark green glossy leaves to create this lush appearance. And if you go for about 75% in your garden with these evergreen shrubs, that will make your garden look very lush and not dried out at all. So lots of different choices there. Um, these photos were taken on Christmas Day last year at the Primrose Garden. And here we have the Western Dog Violet, a nice low growing plant. Likes it in the shade, maybe a little bit moister. They actually grow around one of our spray heads that we have in the garden. Um, Super cute. The flowers are edible. And then we have a different Arctostaphylos over here. I forget the actual variety of this one. But you can see the leaves are not as dark green, so you can get the lighter green color of an Arctostaphylos, and they have the red bark, and then a beautiful pink flower. I mean, how pretty is that? And then we have our native sunflower that you can easily grow from seed, and you can notice there's a larva on it. Sunflowers, they can last for a couple years. They don't live very long, but they are powerhouses in the garden for all kinds of information. So you get the insects eating things, and then you get the birds eating the insects and the seeds. Just a great plant, super easy from seed. Now let's talk about some small issues here. Um, when you do have a native plant garden and you have all this beautiful color from flowers, do not feel like you have to deadhead your plants. That takes food away from birds. So leave the seed heads for the birds. Leave them there longer than you think is necessary. Um, I learned this lesson quite well. There's almost always something there until the stalk has been stripped bare of everything. And the birds do appreciate this. It might take several months, but they will appreciate that stable food source. And these are the small birds on sunflower heads here. You can see this little titmouse here. And then this is Eriogonum fasciculatum, and there's a little bird. This is my backyard. Not sure what that is. But the seed heads on the buckwheat, the eriogonums, are this beautiful chocolate brown color. And I think these look actually kind of scrumptious with this chocolate color. And what this communicates to the birds is that there are seeds here, so they will eat those. And seeds are not just tasty to birds, but they're also tasty to insects. So chances are this is kind of a one-stop fast food spot for birds with both insects and seeds. So the color really does communicate a lot to both humans and the birds. So what you're doing is you're then bringing it all together. You're using that immense power of biology to bring in and keep moisture in your garden. So a lot of these plants have a nice deep taproot that draws down into the water table to pull up the deep soil moisture. I like to use native succulents, like this is Dudleya hassii. Look how fat that is. That is nature's rain barrel right there, the succulents. We have so many different succulents here in California. Um, Here we have a lizard, also packet of moisture. He's a nice juicy treat for a bird. And I also use bulbs. Bulbs store water in the form of carbohydrates. Bulbs like our native brodeas don't like to be watered at all during the summertime. They basically act like a daffodil. They come up in the spring, they bloom, and then they wither away. And you forget where you planted them, and then they surprise you the next year. And so when you use native plants and you're storing water in biology, then when you pair that with a non-biological way to reduce water loss, like with mulch, shade, rocks, and so forth, more moisture is kept in the garden. So let's talk a little bit about propagation, maintenance, and other considerations. This is a bulb seed, Fritillaria pleuriflora, has a beautiful pink flower and forms a bulb. I started some of these seeds about 4 years ago. Probably have about 3 more years for them to bloom. So, um, patience is a virtue. Um, but grow things from seeds. Raising plants from seed preserves genetic diversity. I like to do cold moist stratification, which basically take a seed, you put it into a coffee filter, wet it down, make sure it's labeled, stick it into a plastic bag, stick it in the refrigerator. Many seeds do germinate because they require cold and moisture to germinate other plants, and you need to check this out before you do this. Need the warm moist stratification. So like a redbud tree, for example, those will require a warm stratification versus cold. But growing from seed saves money to grow from seed. And you learn so much about how to sprout things, how quickly things are, and it connects you with the knowledge about a plant's entire life cycle. And my favorite is easier to sow seeds in place than it is to dig a hole. And here I have my scientific apparatus of a toothpick with a little tiny seed here. I'm not sure what this might have been, a delphinium seed, with a little root tip sticking out. That's how you know that they're ready to be put into pots. And to take care of your garden, less is more. So a native garden is less maintenance than a non-native garden with a lawn. Basically, all you're doing is keeping weeds at bay. You want to irrigate those plants to establish it about once a week. And when you do, you want your irrigation to encourage the root to search for water. So deeply and just outside the root ball, prune sparingly to control that dried up dead material for fire safety. You don't need to fertilize. The native plants don't really like fertilizer. Fertilizer makes plants lazy. Okay, and I'll tell you why in a second. You want to amend sparingly. Mulch to control weeds initially and to help establish plants, then mulch with leaves. And then if you don't like the way that looks, you can use a little bit of wood bark on top to hold those in place to get that unified sort of clean look. You want to leave some areas of bare dirt for bee nests. 70% of our native bees nest underground. Do not use leaf blowers in planted areas. This is one of the worst things that you can do is blow all the leaves away. You don't want to use pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides. And this is a beautiful bee on Gilia tricolor, one of the annuals, but you can see it's got yellow and purple, again, complementary colors. And then look at this blue pollen. And so you can learn so much about why pollen has a different color. You can have white pollen, pink pollen, yellow pollen, orange pollen. Why is it all that different? I'm not going to tell you. Those are questions that you can find out. There are answers for that question, and it is fascinating. Now, why do we leave the leaves? This is my pro tip. To create color above the ground, leave your leaves. Unlike chemical fertilizer that feeds the plant directly and can make it lazy and less likely to partner with fungi, leaf litter feeds the entire soil community. That fungal community of bacteria, decomposer fungi, microbes breaks down the leaves, creating the perfect soil structure and slowly releasing nutrients. This process encourages the plant to work with its endomycorrhizal and ectomycorrhizal partners to access that wealth. What do we mean by endo and ecto? So, fun fact, fungus, the ectomycorrhizals, the ones that you see, the above ground mushrooms, forms a sheath outside of roots and creates visible mushrooms. The mushrooms here exchange nutrients with the plants. So in exchange for certain carbohydrates, it'll give the plant all kinds of goodies from the soil. The other kind of mushrooms, they are arbuscular mycorrhiza, grow actually inside of the root and has no visible mushrooms on top of the soil. So a couple of different kinds here. Endo meaning inside and ecto meaning outside. And the ectos are the ones that you see, the mushrooms on top of the soil. It is the best way because you're not just adding nutrients, you're building the complete living ecosystem that this symbiosis is designed to thrive in. When you use a fertilizer, they have no incentive to partner with the things that help them. And, you know, many plants have this sort of arrangement. Um, this arrangement is, you find it in specifically like the Arctostaphylos, the oak trees, the cherries, whereas many shrubby blooming plants have the endo mycorrhiza. Really totally fascinating. You can go down a complete uh, pathway on that for more questions. So if you see this white color, again, white should tell you something. White is telling you that there is an ectomycorrhizal association with these plants on your roots. So again, color informing us about nature. So just a quick thing. So this is the video of the Primrose Way Garden where I was thinking I was going to go out and trim these, uh, the fluffy heads off of the goldenrod. And I learned my lesson that day. This is what I meant when I was like, I learned to just leave the seed heads collecting fluff to build her nest because hummingbirds actually start building their nest pretty early in winter. It's what they use to make their nests soft for their babies. So just the magic. All right, so many insects spend a lot of time as an egg or a larva, months or years, and they overwinter inside stems or leaf litter. And the adult lifespan of many insects is very short. Um, so they just basically live long enough to reproduce, this is bird food here, but they spend their time as bird food much longer in many cases than they do as adults. But look at the colors of these. Again, this is on a poppy. This is Neoterpes edwardsata, one of our native moth species, turns into a beautiful apricot butter moth that flutters out. I believe this is a skipper larva. Um, this is another moth larva here. You get good at identifying based on their color markings. So again, color is informing us about so many things about species, what they are. Um, and you want to take time and have that beauty unfolding over time. Colors emerge. When like this is Eriogonum latifolium or coastal buckwheat, when it's done being pollinated, the flowers turn from white to pink, signaling that they are starting to form seeds and then they turn brown. So they go through color changes. And when you plant native plants, you're providing those opportunities and resources to complete for other organisms to complete their lives. These are two um, Ackman blue butterflies doing their mating dance on the larval food source for their babies. So they're basically courting each other and will eventually lay eggs on this beautiful plant with these flowers here. So you get to see a lot when you just take the time for biological processes to happen. And finally, we began with a goal to use color to find richer tapestries of inquiry. And the final thought is this: the colors that we plant are the inquiry. They are the questions that we ask of the landscape. And it is the abundance of life that arrives that is nature's answer. Our gardens don't just contain a tapestry, they become one, woven in real time. And with that, I will close and take any questions that we might have.
Well, I'm
I
looking
am.
at the chat and at the Q&A, and people may be still absorbing that wonderful closing sentiment. I have to say one thing that I don't remember you ever saying before in past talks, and I never observed that flowers have different colors of pollen. So you really piqued my curiosity there, and I'm going to go look that up myself. So thanks
It's
for that.
you'll thank me later. It's
Yeah,
really it's fascinating. Pollen is like, who knew?
right.
Um, yeah,
I mean, I've been around plants a long time, and I think that's the first time I've ever heard that. So that's a really interesting little tidbit I'm going to go learn more about.
I'll give you a hint what it means. It has to do with the nutrients that are in the pollen.
Okay, interesting.
Yes,
Very cool.
I
Well,
know it's a lot for people to take in. I'm still absorbing it myself.
absolutely. Well, I'm not seeing any raised hands or chat flags or questions showing up in the Q&A. Um, so maybe we don't have any questions tonight. We'll give
Yeah,
people.
I would tell people, planting season has started. And there are so many great places to get native plants. You want to start with those backbone species that you get in there, the pioneer species. And just start with a few. If you don't know where to start, sometimes it's better to bring in a design professional to kind of get things started. And then the gardens are never done. Even though we planted our gardens pretty thickly, I keep finding places where I can just stick another one of those in, or there's something I can put a vine to climb on, or there's a place for a bulb here. So, and the more that you add, you're adding not just color, but more resources. And then all of those things, get woven into this tapestry. And then this tapestry starts to kind of speak to you a little bit. And so all these different characteristics that you see that emerge from the color, the textures, you know, um, just you start asking, why is that like that? Or, like, why is this thing doing the X, And it just turns into this never-ending story. It's it's a joy.
It is really fun. And you mentioned the keystone species very close to the beginning. And I was happy that I have Arctostaphylus ceanothus, Baccharis, and Eriogonum all in my
Nice.
actually front and
Yes.
back gardens. And like
Nice.
you say, I just tucked in some Verbena de lamina, a bunch of them last spring, and I have not watered them this summer, and they are still flowering. I'm surprised they
Wow.
haven't shriveled up yet, but they're still going strong. So it's nice to
Yeah.
see. But
Yeah. I mean, who knew, right?
okay, well, I was trying to give people a couple couple minutes to get their good thoughts together for questions, but I'm not seeing any hands raised. So I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us tonight. And thank you, Juanita, for some wonderful food for thought and things for me
Yes.
to go research. Is there anything in closing that you'd like to add?
I would like to invite everybody to come up to Palo Alto and check out our gardens. Um, the peak color for the gardens in terms of blooms is probably April, May, and beginning of June. If you really want to see a show, the gardens put on a spectacular show of flowers in those seasons. I think they look good all the time. We're always trying different color combinations, not just with the flowers, but with the foliage as well, to really keep that interest going and just make it, communicate so much and to, really pique people's curiosity and kind of help them to see beyond what they're seeing and, just make them wonder, what's why? And then they go and start their journey or continue their journey.
Well, thanks for adding to our journey tonight. And I hope people do go visit the gardens because I've been to a couple of them and they are absolutely lovely. So thank you for all your hard work.
It's a pleasure.
And with that, we'll say good night to everyone and have a wonderful rest of your evening and a wonderful, colorful winter.
Thanks,
Take care.
Victoria.
Thank you,
Bye.
Juanita. Bye-bye.